Hi guys, it's Moa, or Swedish Whiskey Girl, as I'm also known, and I am very excited to start this YouTube channel because I really wanted to kind of get a channel where I can talk to you a bit more and maybe share some thoughts and some approaches towards whiskey that I have, and of course other spirits. So this is my first video and I'm thinking it could be a little bit more of an introduction video, a little bit of an introduction to who I am and how I got started with whiskey. So I'm born in Sweden and I lived there for 19 years before I decided to move abroad. And first I ended up being a tour guide in the Alps, and then I also were a nanny in London for a summer. I eventually ended up here in Edinburgh, where I am right now. And I live here, and I've lived here for about 4 years now, because I did my 3-year course in professional dance, and during my last year I actually realised that I like whiskey. So I met a Scotsman, as you do when you're in Scotland, and he happened to be working with whiskey, and he also made me want to stay here, which I ended up doing. So to actually stay in the country, I of course needed a job to work and earn some money. So I was lucky enough to get a job with the Scotch Whisky Experience, where I learned so much about whiskey and got the chance to meet a lot of wonderful people that work in the industry and get to know the whiskey industry, and especially about Scotch whisky, of course. When I left the Scotch Whisky Experience, I started as an events coordinator for the Scotch Malt Whisky Society in their venue down in Leith, the Vaults, where it all got started. And a few months ago I realised that I wanted to start up my own company and do private whisky tastings and do some freelance jobs and see how I could develop and grow this a bit further. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. It's very exciting, and the thought about this channel is to give you some thoughts that I have about whiskey. I'm going to chat a bit about different whiskies, I'm going to try them, I'm going to share my tasting notes with you. Of course you already know that tasting is very subjective, but I thought it could be fun just to hear my take on some things. Of course, when I got started with whiskey, because I didn't like it at all a few years ago, I thought it just had that alcoholic burn. I thought it was just, everything tasted the same to me. But I got to try a few different samples and learn a bit more about where the flavour comes from, and that really caught my interest. And eventually I found my gateway whiskey, the whiskey that made me realise that I actually do like whiskey, and that is from this lovely distillery here. Don't know if you can see it. Yeah? So this bottle here is Ardbeg Anoa. It was actually the Ardbeg 10 that made me realise that I do like whiskey. Generally these smoky whiskies, so this is a whiskey from Islay, distillery on Islay, and a lot of the distilleries on Islay, which is an island off the west coast of Scotland, they are known for producing a lot of smoky whiskey. So this is packed with smoke, but it's really, really lovely. And generally when you start out with whiskey, you don't typically tend to start with these, but for me it was an absolute perfect dram, because it reminded me of having smoked meats back in Sweden and sitting by a bonfire. So it's associated with a lot of nice memories for me. So realised I liked whiskey, and it kind of escalated from there, because I eventually started documenting my whiskey journey through Swedish Whiskey Girl on Instagram, and now on YouTube and through my blog of course as well. And that kind of took off and a lot of people started following me, so that was really fun, sharing my thoughts and seeing what drams I wanted to try, and of course a lot of international whiskies, and now it just keeps going. So if you want to follow along, feel free to follow me on Instagram or on my website, or perhaps here on YouTube, and see what will come next. Yeah. And if you have any questions, feel free to just drop me a message or maybe leave a comment here below. That'd be great. Skål!